And welcome to Swatches live stream number 83, I think. Let me double check. Anna, you
Yes, I
coming
think.
through? Yeah. Okay, well, guys, thanks again for joining to the live stream. And we again have guest Anna with us. She is a moderator out on the Swatches group. So, Anna, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Hope you are having a nice day already.
Yeah, I am excited to look at these images and talk about the entries we have. If you're new to the stream, then welcome. And what we're doing in this episode is looking over the entries of the Tomb of the Sphinx Art Challenge. This is one that we started 4 weeks ago. So the entries have had 4 weeks. First 2 weeks was working on the concepts, and we reviewed them on an earlier live stream. Now on this live stream, we'll be looking at the finals and giving them any extra tips or answering questions they might have on how to improve the piece and take it further from where they have now. We also have a variety of other announcements to get through. So let me go ahead and just move this menu out of the way. I think we look good here. Now, guys, let us know how the audio sounds. I think I probably need to turn Anna's up. For some reason, it always turns her back down when I close the stream. So, let me minimize that. Let us know
I'm gonna
how
say
the...
test.
Yeah, how does Anna sound from your side, guys? We just want to take a couple of minutes here to run through the announcements, make sure all the audio levels are good, and then we will start looking at the artwork. Sounds good to you
Yeah,
guys?
yeah.
Cool.
So we're the same volume around. Not that I'm screaming and Clint is very silently talking to you. Okay, seems good.
All right, then let's get going. So, as we recently had, we passed 5,000 members in the Swatches art group on the Facebook group. And if you want to join out there, then you can just go to swatches.group. It will link you to the correct group there on Facebook. Make sure that you answer the question of why you want to join. You can just say something simple like, I like art. We're just trying to filter out anybody who's trying to sell stuff and robots and that sort of thing. Now, because of the 5,000 member, we're going to have a special stream next Wednesday. I'll probably be trying to speak with Anna on finding a time. It might be this same time on Wednesday, but I don't have that confirmed yet. We're going to be doing a variety of different things. One will be doing a paint over special. This isn't a portfolio review. What I'll be doing is setting up a Dropbox folder where you can upload one image, to be considered for a paint over. And we're going to just spend some time doing paint overs together and talking about different ways to improve pieces. And so if you want to be a part of that, then keep an eye on the Facebook group, and I will put a link to the folder to upload your images out there. We'll also be talking about maybe some of our favorite artists or artworks, and maybe answering some of your questions. So Anna and I will be speaking about that. Notice number 4. For the sake of this challenge that is coming up, I have put Making Nisa, Making Jace, Making Liliana, and the painting process video all on sale on Swatches Art. They range from 25 to 30% off. So if you want to gear up and have an idea of how to approach the next challenge with a better concept of how to go about it, then you can pick up some of these items from the store while they're on sale for this challenge. If you want a one-on-one video chat with me and just having a virtual mentorship, then you can do that at art-mentor.com. Schedule a 1-hour video chat with me. We can talk about where your portfolio is, strengths and weaknesses, talk about what you need to be practicing on your education side, or maybe you're just trying to improve a certain piece in order to get it in your portfolio. Maybe it's your first commission. You want to make sure you do a good job. Whatever it is, we will catch up with wherever you are and address your questions. Number 6, the new challenge. I did think about this a little bit because we were then going to try to have two groups, and each group is going to be offset by a week. The tickets are also going to be offset by a week. So the first group of tickets will be going on sale tomorrow for group 1. The second group of tickets will go on sale next week when group 2 finishes the Tomb of Sphinx challenge. We'll also be trying to break up the tickets within each group by 12 hours or so people on different continents can have a chance to pick them up while they're awake. We will be taking a look at the breakdown of that here right as I finish these announcements, so you know what the next challenge will be. I am also live streaming on Twitch for 2 hours in the morning, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. till noon. It is not necessarily education based, although I do kind of talk about what happens, when I'm doing my artwork, and I'm happy to take questions and that sort of thing. If you do, I got a question there, like what the one-on-one is. Just go out to the webpage art-mentor.com. I have a layout of how the mentorship consults work. I have a 1-minute video where I kind of explain the outline of how they work. So if you want more details on that, you can just go out there and you've got info out there as well. And of course, if you like the channel, if you appreciate the content, the feedback, or maybe just enjoy the community, please leave a like on the video. And also leave a comment. Let us know what you enjoyed or maybe what tip stood out to you. And we're also always open for concepts for new art challenges. So feel free to leave one down there. I read every comment left on the YouTube channel, even if I don't get to answer all of them. And of course, consider subscribing so you don't lose swatches out to the ether of the YouTube algorithm. All right, am I missing anything that you know of before we take a look at the new challenge, Anna?
No, I think you covered everything. You're good to go.
Okay, then the new challenge. We did get submissions from you guys as far as what you wanted to see covered. And there was a lot of interest in both MTG, like proper MTG images, and Warcraft. So that is what it's based on. Now I will pull up the outline here and we'll kind of run through the outline and I'll expound on that a little bit for those of you interested. This will be again a 4-week challenge. You will have 2 weeks in order to create and submit your concepts, and we'll have a live stream review of those, and then you will have 2 weeks after that in order to create your final submit in, and then we'll have another review. You can choose one of 2 subjects, either based on the Planeswalker or on Warcraft. For the Planeswalker, design and illustrate the card art for the new Planeswalker, Asheron Thousand Dawn. This is all fictional. This isn't an actual an actual MTG character. He is a white aligned character, and the location is in karst mountains with stormy skies, either by a water's edge or high in the mountains. Karst mountains are the sort of really straight-edged, kind of spiral-like mountains that you see over in China area. So you can take a look at some images. I will pull up some references as well. The size is 3,000 by 4,000, vertical card format, very close to what you would have with a standard Planeswalker sort of image. Show the Planeswalker Asheron Thousand Dawn in his white and gold monk robes with the mountain and sky behind him. He is a holy warrior and should be standing confidently and focused, looking slightly off of the camera, not directly into the camera. Heroic light should give him a powerful presence. Possibly include some large ancient statues in the landscape just to break it up and give a little more context and culture from where he is. He is a male, Asian, 30 to 45 years old. His right arm, which was lost in battle, is now golden and ethereal. So it's like a transparent golden kind of magic arm. His left arm also has golden tattoos on it that might match the right side. His robes are a mix of white and gold. He should be either bald or with his hair pulled back, which comes up into kind of like a large spray. It just sort of, sprays out or fans out from the tie that he has at the back of his head. Now, if you're going for Warcraft, this is more of a splash art featuring a female night elf. It is 3,000 width by 1,700 height. I have also included templates that have been sized to these particular sizes, so you don't have to adjust the templates. They have been adjusted for you. This should be located in a forest and show a female dark elf on a hunt, either solo or with an animal companion. The forest should feel magical, and the elf should feel both deadly and beautiful, as your female night elves do in Warcraft. The class and the weapons of the character are open. Don't really care. It's more about just establishing the feeling of Warcraft and this elf on a hunt. Rendering should reflect the stylized shapes and design of Warcraft, but it can include some of the aspects of like a League of Legends splash art, the way that they create a splash art image. Kind of think about that, but in terms of Warcraft subjects with their sort of rendering style. The scene may be night or day. Just include plenty of color. Don't if it's at night, don't go too dark, too grayed out, because we do want plenty of color to catch a viewer's attention. Prioritize, which I did not spell correctly, prioritize the rule of cool over complete realism. So if it looks better with a little artistic license, the way that you handle some of the colors and some of the lighting, if it's cooler, if it's more engaging to do it that way, and it's not completely completely realistic, that's okay. Templates. You are supplied 2 templates. One for the Planeswalker, which is your vertical. One for the Warcraft, which is horizontal. You can plug your references and stuff into that. Do that as you will see going forwards. I've also included this. We don't normally have this. I added this in here, which is workflow. Just kind of give you an idea. For concept phase, prioritize the composition, the pose, and the value and lighting scheme for those first 2 weeks. That's what you're looking for. Colors are optional during the concept phase. Clarity of the subject is important. I have to be able to understand what I'm looking at in order to be able to critique it. Begin with at least 3 different composition concepts, and no shading is required during those. You're just working out the composition, the arrangement of the elements, and general pose. Design around simple compositional patterns, such as a triangle or radiating lines. Find a pattern that works for your layout that you like, and follow that. Then choose the best concept and refine the drawing with subject references. So you find the one that has the layout that you like, and then you go find some straightforward, quick references for the pose, for the background, that sort of thing. And then you refine that drawing. We're not looking for high fidelity of the drawing, but just try to get some accuracy going forward. Do at least 3 distinct value studies after you do the drawing. Each should have an example of different lighting setup and value scheme. Think in terms of 3 to 5 values only. Think in terms of light and dark pattern. I do suggest that you try actually doing a light and shadow variation. Just do it in light and black and see if you can get the values to work that way, and then include perhaps a 3rd value, so you have light, medium, and dark, and make the scene work with just 3 values. If it can work with 3 values, it'll work with all the values. Choose the best and find or take lighting reference and apply to the refined drawing. And if time allows, do 3 simple color studies using like a color or overlay layer, something straightforward and quick, in order to just get across the idea of kind of where you're planning to take the colors. Don't worry if it's too accurate or not. Don't just change the hue of the subjects. Like, don't just change how green or what kind of green the trees are. What you're looking at is changing the actual color of the light, or making the foreground warm, the background warm, versus, warm, cool sort of dynamic. Is it analogous? Is it complementary? In the chat, I do want to look over. Do we have some questions on this, Anna, or is there some clarifications that we need to go over?
Yeah, it's just people are asking when the tickets are going on sale and things like that. So most things are answered in the chat. And I'd say Clint is an MTG artist, guys. You have the chance here. to imagine you were doing a piece for MTG, okay? And there is a guy here giving you the tips on how to do that. Holy smokes, just go for it, people. This is your chance. I think, have you ever had an MTG challenge before?
Uh,
Clint, was there any?
I mean, yes and no. We did some that
Yes and
were
no.
MTG-ish, but
Ish,
this one's the
yeah.
most
Super
properly
close. Super
MTG.
close.
Yeah.
So that is why Clint also said about the sale earlier. So I'd really recommend get this process one, this painting process file ebook, and choose one of those paintings that you like most and get those as well, like I don't know, Nissa or something like that,
Hmm.
and study that really hard. Like put some days into that, and then you do that challenge, and you will learn so much from it, and it's totally worth it. Go for it, guys.
Yeah, in
I'm
those
super excited.
videos, it's in the videos, the Nissa, Jason, Liliana, those are all images that I illustrated for Magic of different planeswalkers. And I take you through the whole process of, okay, we look at the brief, the same sort of brief that I'm giving you right here, and I talk about my notes of what I'm paying attention to, and I show you the thumbnails that I did and what I explored and tried to establish in each stage. So if you want to see how I went through about the process, that's why those are on sale, because they're very applicable to this. Yeah, the tickets will be going on sale for Group 1, that is the first 12 tickets. They will 6 of them will go on sale about noon tomorrow, my time, CST, Central Standard Time. Then the other 6, the other half of Group 1 tickets will go on sale like 10-ish p.m. when I'm about to go to bed. And then Group 2 tickets will go on sale next Saturday because they're offset by a week. And there's some people saying that they're not sure which one they'd go for. But that's fine. You know what? If you want to just get in and you're not sure which one to do, just do some like concepts of both of them and see which one's working the best for you. You don't have to decide immediately which one it is. See which one is giving you a better interest. Like, man, I thought I was going to get that Planeswalker the way that I wanted, but it's not really coming together. But I'm feeling pretty good about this Warcraft one. Yeah, then just go with the Warcraft one. So, okay, let me show you some quick images that I pulled together that example some of the ideas in a lot of these major commissions. You would be given a style guide for reference. Now, I don't have a proper style guide, but let's look at some of these images. These are Planeswalker images from MTG. These are some really lovely images. And this is sort of thing that you're looking for, a vertical image. The character is basically in a standing pose, walking pose, that sort of thing. And you have a nice scene around them. And that's what you want to put Asheron in. Except for he's going to have a mountain scene behind him that is similar to something like you see down here. Now, these are kind of spiral-like karst mountains, something like that could work. You could have it really foggy and atmospheric like that. That would work. Something along this lines. Even if you wanted to put maybe some waterfalls and sort of Asian-inspired temples, that sort of stuff, that could work as well. Having a big waterfall thing back here with the character on the ledge, the whole arrangement of the scene, not the character, but the arrangement of the scene is right in line as well. I'm also looking at the character probably being lit, kind of like this, where the character is lit and the background is a bit darker. That sort of dynamic would work really well. So a sort of moody background like this that might just have some light coming down. Then you have the character and he has light on him from one of the light rays coming down. That would work really nice as well. So anything on those lines as far as this would work nicely. And for the character, make sure that they have they're not completely orthogonal, not like just straight to the camera. Even though she's straight to the camera, she does have like one leg in front of the other one. One of the arms is towards us. And then they break up the pattern with all the movement of the fabric. And so that really works well. And his design, as far as sort of the monk, could be actually similar to this, with the nice flowing fabrics this way. As far as Warcraft, these are some excellent examples of Warcraft art. Right? They have the particular stylized way that they render things. It's not really as realistic as most MTG images are, because it uses exaggerated shapes more, and it commits to a little more heavy-handed colors, and that's fine for this particular style. Now, this is a night elf, and so you'd be doing something along this line. These are also excellent examples of like a night elf in a in a forest sort of scene. That one does have the animal companion, so these are right along the same line. And then also consider this sort of thing where the character isn't just standing there, but is making their way through the trees or the canopies or over rocks, and where it looks like she's really trying to hide. This is just a really beautiful cosplay image. And the lighting might give you some ideas, and so something along that lines could be really cool. This is actually League of Legends splash art of the character Cena. Oh, sorry, yeah, she's a blood elf. My bad. It has been over a decade since I played Warcraft, but there you go. Look it up yourself. But something even along this lines could work pretty well. And that is, a closer, tighter crop on the image, and have, the trees, make sure that you can kind of see the forest scene around her. But a moody sort of image like that would work as well. All right, any questions on that or clarifications, Anna?
For the Planeswalker, I'm not, I didn't play so much MTG, so it is a new one that we have to design, right? Or is it?
Yes, this is not an existing Planeswalker.
So,
Occasionally, they introduce new characters that can planeswalk. It's a unique ability, a power that they have called their Spark Power, and it's like different planes that they go to, that they come across to other planeswalkers on those planes, which are like the hero champions of that particular world. And that's kind of what we're looking at with this guy, that they travel to some world and he is sort of the premier champion of that place. And we want to have him with the normal full art card.
so there's many different designs for monks. Do you have something specific in mind for it? Or do you say any type of monk is fine by me? Or does it have to fit something design-wise?
No, not really. I wanted to leave that pretty open, because there is sort of a variety of different fantasy monk designs, and I didn't want to limit it. Just kind of conveying that he's not like a Johnny. He doesn't have this massive double-bladed weapon, and he's also not necessarily a magic user, other than you see the magic arm. He might have some minor magic, like symbols or something going around, but he's not necessarily like a spellcaster, or like a firebender like Chandra, right?
Yeah, you did one monk piece. I can remember, or it looked to me at least as a monk with for a card some fire added something. Is this kind of direction that we can go to? It was where he was on top of a valley and looking downward to it, and it, because this is a monk from MTG, I guess, so it could go that direction.
But you can also take a look for ideas. If it was me, I would look for ideas from Dungeons and Dragons as well, and Pathfinder, and see what some of the monk designs are from them. And see different styles. Do you want him with big flowing robes, or do you want him, a bit tighter, with the tighter wrappings with just a few loose bits around him? Either way could be good. Just depends how you handle it. And try to bring in maybe some influences, even like the Pandaren character here. Maybe he has a few pieces of armor, like a few shoulder pieces or the forearm armor bits. and consider what kind of elements of the culture you can add in. Is there some sort of symbology that you could add in from whatever this new world is? Does he have a crane motif? Is that something about where he comes from? And so you can. I'm going to give this as a starting point. Now, don't go so crazy. It's like, oh, okay, well, decided he's actually going to be a steampunk monk, and he's going to have like this blunderbuss gun that's strapped on. No, no. All right. I'm not looking for
Yes.
that kind of creativity. I'm just talking about kind of the different shapes that you use. Maybe it's slightly different than your standard monk,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
I asked because Clint also has very nice material on character design on his Gumroad. So I think these files might help you as well with finding the right shape language for your character. And it's a good training for people who want to get in concept design, character design. So you could use this as an opportunity to train that. And my tip for this piece would then be maybe do a design first from front, side, and back view or something like that, or at least from
Oh,
front and side,
yeah.
and not like going directly into the painting and then figuring out things there, because sometimes when you have a dynamic angle, it's a little bit hard to think about, okay, what is this girdle doing here and what is this doing there, and do I have armor there or not? And go for like first the design and then think about the piece would be my tip here.
Yeah, I've thought about that and I forgot to write that down. But you're exactly right. Anna's on the right line. Before you start your actual, fuller rendering, do a character design and work out the general look of the character. And it doesn't have to be uber detailed. You don't have to draw in like all the little stitching and all that stuff. You don't necessarily you'd have to do a real good face rendering, but have an idea of the forms and the shapes and the design of the character, and then put him in the scene. I had just started putting this together as a reference of different concepts and stuff. But this is an excellent example of the sort of concept that could work if you're doing black and white, where you've done your lines, you've worked out the pose, it's very clear what's going on, and there's just simple black and white shading added to give an idea of kind of what the lighting is and how the character is going to stand out. That's by Rudy Ciswanto. I found it online. But something like that could work very well for a concept submission. And I also came across this, which was quite interesting, and it doesn't want to scale it up correctly. This was by CGMA advertisement. And this sort of thing is a real good way to approach the scene. Where a lot of people will they'll just think, okay, well, I need to do a lighthouse, by the coast was a city. And so that's kind of their first thought of laying it out. But this is, okay, thinking about the shapes, and then what do you turn it into? And by keeping almost all of the same elements, this one is far more dynamic. And so that's a good process is you do your first sort of ugly pass. And the ugly pass is just making sure that you're putting in all the proper elements. Then you come back to it and say, okay, now how can I find better shapes out of this? How can I make it more engaging? And you redesign it so that it has a lot more punch to it, kind of this sort of way. Yes, Tyler Edlin has videos. He's the one that actually did this review and these adjustments. He has a YouTube channel. So I do recommend you go watch his stuff. I watch his stuff as well. They're excellent content, so go check out those as well. Travis says, if we have ideas that vary from the directions a bit, what's the best way to clear those ideas with you before the actual review? Travis, this is set up kind of like, commission. So, serving as an art director, you can just shoot me an email. Just say, hey, I'm working on this. Would it be right to make these sort of changes? Just shoot me an email. I'm not going to necessarily review the image, but I can give you some quick feedback about whether that follows the brief or not. And that would be a normal workflow on an actual MTG commission as well. If I was unclear of where the artistic license ended, then I would just shoot my art director an email and ask them whether something would be permissible or not. So that would work just fine. Looks good. Okay, well, we have got to get into these other images, and I will close that down. Save that down. Here. Great. We're going to start with Christina. Open that up. Christina says, I wanted the jackal skeletons to fade into swirling shadows that rise out of his magic. And if you do the challenge, if you're new to the channel and you do the challenge, we do leave a spot down here where you can write in comments or questions for me to focus on during a review. But I have to try to paint it multiple ways and don't know how to pull that effect off. They look way too substantial like this. I wanted them to be more of a suggestion, just hints of skeletal shapes in smoke. They also still look ridiculous and not scary. Okay. Now, Anna, do you want to start with this one, or would you like me to get started?
Yeah, so Christina, I think your piece got much cleaner and much more readable, and you have a very good use of space in this one. You have very strong colors and very vibrant colors and good division between the fore and the background with the values. I think this is going the right direction already. So I already told Clint today that I'm going to split up my critiques in three main pieces, which is because we have some people that are looking for minor tweaks to finish their pieces off because they don't want to put much more work into it. So I'm going to give one for looking for tweaking. I have one for looking for the image improvement. So what you could do if you had more time to work on it. And looking for skill improvement is the third one. So what to do after this piece next with your art and where to go. And maybe Clint can elaborate. If he likes that system, he can elaborate later on these three. So just really quickly, for the tweak ones, I'd say push the light and glowing effects a little bit more, brighten the guy in the front a little bit up with some lighting hitting his chest, hitting his headpiece and so on. It's all a little bit flat at the moment right now. I think you can push the focal point a little bit more, and that what you struggled with, the creatures, that they have a little bit more glow around them, that they feel a little bit more foggier. I think Clint can later give you some nice tips on that, how you achieve that look. These would be my minor tweaks. If you were looking for even doing further, so improvement, I'd say the creatures are at very same angles. They're very similar to each other. I liked the version before where you had like one coming from below and the other coming from top, and one facing down, the other maybe up or something. That there's a little bit more movement into it. I changed at least one of the creatures with their angle, or with their kind of with their movement, with their dynamics in general. So this would be my biggest thing that I change about that. For further improvements in your skill range, I'd say what I see in this piece is that she does but I'm gonna say this with a lot of people, is that thinking in 3D that also I have problems with, and Clint taught me already a lot about that, but I'm still trying to improve on that, is that you try to think about your objects in 3D. You started with that. We see that with some parts hitting the brighter lights and some being more in the dark. You're starting to think about that, but you're not pushing through with that. So form studies and seeing how objects behave in perspective and so on would be a really good study for you. These are my general tips on this one for now. Clint.
Yeah, I like to break down the way that you're applying the feedback there, and that's actually not a bad way to think about your own art, guys. Is what do I need to do for this piece, and then that's sort of like your immediate focus. Then also thinking about what do I need to focus on overall, where am I going, and what sort of studies do I need to do to improve. So yeah, I like that. I'm with you that we overall we're getting an excellent piece here, Christina. I'm quite impressed about how you've brought this ahead, and I think that you are just really nailing the sort of color tone and values that this challenge needs. Some people have a hard time running that line of realistic versus colorful and having the right artistic license for the values and stuff. And so that's coming across quite well, and I like that. I am with your own suggestion that these guys, not particularly scary, and given the choice, I would just go for your smoke. Like, even this sort of design on smoke is pretty good. I would go with smoke over just kind of the odd little creatures. If anything, we could probably just have the skulls. I wouldn't put the bodies on it. It makes them less threatening. It just makes them a little more comical. So I would change that. I made some marks here of suggestions. So on these, I would turn it to smoke and try to design the smoke so that there's just a couple of elements of the smoke that bends around and creates like half of the skull shape, and then just put the glowing eyes in that, and that could be enough. It's just like incorporating some skull features into the smoke pattern as it's trailing. You're not really making you're making the smoke into the face rather than just having a straight on character there. And this would help break up the straight lines in the background like you have, and you can just swirl the smoke in different patterns and stuff around him. I like this idea because I think that is working so well. I like the colors that you're using here, and you can do this sort of gradient change like this around the creature. So maybe around the creature's face it gets a little brighter in that smoke pattern, and their eyes could be more like this. Like the smoke is dark, like this, but then the eyes are that glowing bit, like it's sticking out of the mummy wrappings, right? So that's how I would approach that if I was trying to, the art direction said, okay, well, there needs to be some skull faces in the smoke. And like, okay, well, that would be good. Aside from that, I'll be looking at a couple of other changes. One is Egyptian up. I'm sure that's a word, Egyptian. I coined it today, right there. Egyptian up the environment some, because right now the environment isn't really particularly Egyptian. So some of the changes, I was just looking at this. They've got the curved ceiling there, and that could be nice. The flat ceiling is just a little static, so maybe we're curving that, and we're looking for places to put some sort of hieroglyphics across the walls. And that would immediately give more setting for the Egyptian theme to it. That can be very handy. Yeah, you could add more of the light on the character. Let's turn that down. Or you could just add a bit more of the exposure to it. I do like the bright light here, although we might be able to take this off a little bit further and not just have it immediately so close, but it could be fading off a little bit and maybe have some little spots kind of coming off of it. Something else is like these bandages are feeling almost more wood-like rather than paper-like or like the softer fabric. And so I'd be taking out some of the grain of that and seeing about the grain going more crossways than along the axis. Instead of going this way, having the grain going more of the up and down pattern. And breaking it up a little bit. Some of this is just like a little too perfect. So I'm looking at adding in one that sort of bucks that. And it's going a little bit at an odd angle to the other ones. in a couple of just different places, or maybe one's just hanging down further, and he's a little looser, that sort of thing. A change I would also be looking to make, and just grab this. His upper body isn't really rotating. His arm is being put forward here, and that arm is going back, but his chest is completely turned straight to us. So I'd be thinking about this and running a warp, essentially, where I'm trying to turn his chest. You can sort of see the difference that makes, right? Turn that off. And so you can see where the chest is sort of turned, and it makes it feel like this arm is coming forwards now, and that his body's going back. Where the chest is doing this curve, and then the legs would be doing that because the legs are offset. Right? Doing that sort of thing, and then that leg is coming forwards. And that would be a bit more natural to the pose, and it gives a little bit more of the 3D turn to the body as well. Okay, was there anything else I was going to mention? No, I mean, that was all my major points. I think if those elements were addressed, it would pretty much wrap up the piece very nicely. And I would consider it quite successful for what this challenge is.
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, well, I'm going to close that one. And move on to Daniel. Okay, Daniel has no comments, so we won't be answering any of that. Daniel, huge improvement from the sketch. You've done a lot of development. Went out, got some extra photos to work out some of the pose issues we had. Rearranged the scene in order to have a stronger composition that would make a lot for the logo. And yeah, I'm liking this. Definitely some things that we can tweak to make it stronger and follow the brief some. So what stood out to you, Anna, as far as kind of where you could see this being taken and what would overall strengthen this piece?
Yeah, so Daniel, your piece also got very much more cleaner, readable, and I feel that you restricted yourself much more and tried to follow very closely what Clint and I gave you as a critique last week. You really improved the pose of her. It is now much more natural. You worked on the lighting. This is good. You have a good use of space, except for the little left top corner. But I think the rest is a very good usage of space. For the tweaks, I would work a little bit on that corner because it looks a little bit empty and meaningless by now. Also, the background has a lot of smoke, and that corner doesn't. So it is suddenly as if it is not part of the same background. That threw me off a little bit. Maybe give the blacks in the scarabs a little bit more of colorful reflections from the light that's coming from below. It's a pretty black, just simply black dots, and I feel that they are very heavy in this painting. I feel much weight to them, and I would try to lift that weight a little bit more, and maybe adding a little bit of motion blur to their wings so that we see they are flying could be a really cool effect. I know it's hard to pull off. I never painted it myself. Maybe Clint has some tips on that, how to do that. I'm not sure. A little bit motion blur. And her hair is a little bit tangly in all different directions. I would maybe try to make them a little bit more going in the uniform movement so that we see, she just came to the front, and now the hair that should stay in the back a little bit more, so like in one more similar wave. Doesn't have to be perfect similar wave, same wave, but similar. Yeah, then the composition with the top left I changed. And one thing, it might be personal preference, but the scales, I would like to have them being more snaky scales, so of a snake. They by now look a little bit like scales of, what is that animal called from South America that looks like a big mouse or something and has these scales on top, like in Road of El Dorado, the little creature that is there with Chell and so on. Do you know that movie?
Is it
I don't know. I,
armadillo? Man, it's been ages since
Armadillo,
I saw that
armadillo.
movie.
I think it's an armadillo. I think this is more armadillo-like. I'm not good with animal with animal textures, but this is kind of reminding me of that. So I would go for a little bit more snaky one with having little sparkles and something like that. That looks a little bit more wet, and it's so close to us. So it needs a little bit more rendering. It's so close to us, even if it's not the focal point, it's a little bit dull by now. So I'd give that a little bit more attention. Yeah, and we said already the last time, if you look for skill improvement, your work with composition and value, having some compositional and value studies would probably push your art the fastest at this point
Yeah.
right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like Daniel probably has a decent handle on doing like individual subjects, doing a scarab, doing a a character. But it's a whole different ballgame when you start having to design a scene that has multiple characters and environment and making room for a logo. And it's just one of those things that you get better with practice. But that would definitely be somewhere that would be worth putting more time into going forwards. I like a lot of your suggestions. One of the suggestions about the scales, one of the things I was going to mention. So if you look at the skills that you have, you've got this basic pattern where like they perfectly line up like this, and each one runs into the halfway of the next one, and that is your basic scale pattern. But if you look at a snake, that's not really what they've got. What you'll see is that like you've got one here, and they're not usually perfectly. This was like as wide as it is long, or even wider. They're generally a little bit longer. Then they don't meet in the middle. So the next one actually offsets a little bit at the tip. And then that one offsets from that tip. And that one offsets. And so what you get a bit more is this slightly rounded hexagon shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, hex. And so each one is slightly more hexagonal in its shape rather than just a little circle, sort of fan shape. And getting that sort of pattern would make it feel a lot more snake-like. Let's clear that. Okay, some different notes up here. One is Egyptian. I feel like we're losing a lot of the Egyptian feel on her. She feels kind of generically fantasy. And several of the images did in this challenge. So I went out and I grabbed some different images. And these are some Egyptian characters from various games, most of them from Assassin's Creed Origins, which takes place in Egypt. And none of these are like completely realistic Egyptian. It's all fantasy version Egyptian. But you can see where you can get the Egyptian theme going on with these characters of the gold sort of fan shapes and this sort of striation of like light and dark patterns here and the wide pieces that go around the shoulders and goes around there. You've got the mask, right? This sort of thing. These are all really good influences. And like on this guy, like you got like this undead dude over here. Well, he looks undead or mummy-ish or something. And this is a good example of like getting this and elongating it and combining the flesh with the flesh or the wrappings of a mummy. And that's kind of what we need to see more over here, is going back and looking at some of these Egyptian shapes for the headpieces? And what would give it more of that feel? Can we get some of that going on with the face, and instead of just random horns? I think that would add a lot. Another one would be using the pillars to give more of the Egyptian feel as well. And in a lot of the Egyptian stuff, you do see that curved top where it sort of fans out like this. And so I'd be looking at utilizing that in order to help fill the scene as well and set the tone of where this is taking place. With the scarab dudes, also thinking about like it feels like they just have this kind of random electricity going around them. And for what we're looking at with this particular challenge, more of the glow might be better because it would give you a clear overall silhouette and you can just punch the color up. It's not completely realistic, but it is the sort of thing that would work for a sort of family board game cover. For this sort of thing, having that sort of glow could work for the character. I'm with you, Anna. Like, something should be going on up there, whether we just have more scarabs coming up on that left corner, putting that there, or whether we have another pillar up there. Anything like that could be fine, or whether you continue a bit of that tone and then we have, silhouettes of some of the guys up there. That can work as well. I'm really thinking of getting like that necklace being left there, but giving her at least that iconic piece that goes around the neck and the shoulders. Make that feel more Egyptian, giving her some of the bracers with the Egyptian shapes and design on it. We just need that to really come across well. And for these, the symbols, probably not bright white. It's just a little stark. So you can have... I'm sorry, I got a fly right on my screen walking around bugging me. Yes, I know, computer. Thank you. Letting that get darker, then you can just have the white more on the inside. It's just a little bit, but lots of pure color around that symbol, or just using the bright symbol itself. And value-wise, we could probably make some adjustments so that it's reading a little better. I'd be looking at letting this stay lighter back here so that Mr. Scarab shows up better against a lighter background, like this. And then we can actually just let this foreground part of the snake go darker, right? And it's okay if some of this stuff stays lighter back here, and that guy can just stay darker, generally speaking, and you're just letting that glow do most of the work. You got more of that bright glow around the eyes. And we're just trying to simplify that value scheme a little bit. So it's kind of like these guys in the foreground are dark. Then all this mid-ground stuff is sort of light, and the background sort of stuff is light, except for the beetles and for her. In which case, I'd probably even tone her down a little bit, some of the lights on her, just so that her silhouette is the primary thing that's showing up. All right, well, that's a lot of feedback. Play with that sort of thing, Daniel. And it's not requiring like a major repaint. We're not like moving characters around, that sort of thing. We're just toning down some of the lights here and there. But we do need to work on the redesign of her garb and her, stuff that she's wearing to give more of the Egyptian theme to it. All right.
Yeah, very cool. So for everyone who reworks their finals, feel free to post them in the group so that we have a look on what you improved and where you took it. And it's always nice to see also also as the persons who critiqued it, what you got out of it and how you went on with it. It's always nice to see that, and feel free to post there. And I'm still missing a lot of pieces of the last challenges, so even if it's an older one, people, and you finish it up, post it. We really want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you didn't get time to finish it for this challenge or submit it, then do it, at your own pace. But we'd still love to see you post it out in the group at some point and kind of see where you ended up taking it. Now this one is Francois, and it says, "Hey Clint, I did what I can for this challenge, but I didn't have the time I first hoped to. So my work is really not polished, and I apologize for that. I tried to go out of my comfort zone." Going with more of the cartoony style. I tend to have issues when I try to polish more because I tend to go more realist than what I would like it to be. Can you show me the steps I would go through to render this piece in a proper way? Okay, well, this is another piece that I think works really good as a board game cover. I think it gives that sort of action feel to the overall scene and sets the stage for what you would kind of expect from the game. So, Anna, you're looking at this. You probably have similar thoughts along that line, but taking it from here, what's your ideas?
Yeah, Francois, it is a wonderful piece. I really like it. I can imagine it being on top of a gaming box, so it's really, really good. And everything I will say will be rather nitpicking. So you fleshed out what you started with, you have good colors, you have a consistent lighting, you have a good perspective going on. It's all good. The characters, you know anatomy, you know how to do clothes and well, he's a professional, as I found out. So he's already working for a company. So what I'd expect from you. So for looking for minor tweaks, if you're looking for minor tweaks, I'd say flesh out a little bit, because it's one of the directly in the middle of the painting. This word was the first thing that catched my eye, because it looks super flat and like a sketch and not finished yet. There's, I don't know, is it a glowy sword or is it? I was a little bit confused by that. So, and I was confused by the guy and the hand on the sides that is supposed to be foreground, like the mummy face or something like that. I was thinking about whether it would be okay to just leave it out and have as a foreground just the Sphinx statue. Because by now it doesn't feel like it's part of that painting. It feels a little bit, I don't know, squeezed into, and it doesn't add anything. So we have such creatures in the background. We know there are mummies approaching. We don't need an extra one in the foreground. Maybe it would be even okay to just have background there. You don't have to replace it by anything. So this is what I was thinking first. And also her magic is super opaque. And it's also covering parts of her face, but I think is a little bit sad because you drew it so wonderfully. I would love to see more of that face of her. So having the magic being a little bit more opaque, but less opaque, sorry, would improve the look of it even further. And one thing for improvement, I don't know whether it's just me, Clint. You must tell me whether you had that same image. When I opened the painting and just had a look without zooming in much, I was like, oh, is he the guy in the middle? Is he an ape person? So is it not human, but maybe an ape race or something like that? And then I zoomed in and was like, oh, no, I think it's supposed to be human. Maybe it's like the little top of his head, or the ears that are coming super forward with combination of beard, so there's much facial hair. It might just be me. So for me, it's a little bit, I was thinking he's a little bit ape-like. So, and for the last thing that I'd like to say is, I felt like the guy on the left is also super bulky as the one in the middle. And I like to have different body types for different characters. In a game, usually you design it like that you have very specific things that only that character has if you have just like 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd prefer him being an old guy, old skinny wizard or something like that. So maybe more going in that direction, or more of what's it called? Not ninja, rogue, a little bit rogue type or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have 2 super bulky arms nearly at the same angle, directly at the front of the painting, and that threw me off a lot. Also, the arm doesn't look like it's belonging to the rest of the body because it's really super bulky, from the guy on the left. And so I'd reconsider, if you want to put much more time into it, I would reconsider that. And yeah, one more thing, if you want to do a little bit more work on it, might be also personal preference, but her skirt is covering a lot of her silhouette and is also cutting into the foreground a lot. So we lose a lot of her silhouette. Either make the skirt a little bit more look through, or shorten it up that we see part of one leg at least, or something, that we see what angle her legs are at. But yeah, this might be personal preference. Clint can give you the more proficient opinion on that. And for further improvement in general, I just say, yeah, maybe compositional studies, because of that mommy thing in the foreground. But he basically is already much higher than me in skill level. So, Clint, you're the one. You must tell him how to improve his studies.
No, Francois, I hope you listen to her feedback. She's got a really good eye for some of the things that ought to be addressed, and most of them were things that I would have mentioned myself. So let's kind of walk through that. Yeah, the guy on the top right here in the foreground, it's too unclear to really make out what's going on there. Yeah, I'm not convinced you necessarily need him. If I was going to have him, I might just put like the head up here and part of the shoulder and kind of the arm coming off more of this way. I think that would be more successful than, I think it's just a profile right now, but it's not working very well. So I would change that to either removing it or making it more like kind of the upper torso that's leaning in. I really like this guy down here, the statue. Tilted off to the angle like that, and the nice golden sort of underlight on him. That's a good choice. I'm with you, Anna. The dress here, the flow and the movement of it is great, but it's just becoming this really bulky sort of object in the scene. So the solution I would look at is making it a split dress, so that it's kind of like Liliana's, where there's a split on the side that goes up towards the hip. And so you have part of the dress that's wrapping back around the other side of her. Then you have this front piece that is there, that comes along in the front. And so you get to see the leg, and she's got, I assume some sort of breeches and high boots, that sort of thing. And then you've got the better silhouette of her legs there, and then we're raising up the back side, and you're kind of taking out all of this area of the dress, and then you're seeing the underside of the fabric more along there. I think that would help aerate that area, open it up a little bit, and that would be a better read. Yeah, these two guys are quite similar physically wise. I'm okay if you want the sorcerer dude to be, thick, but let's make him more paunchy rather than muscular. You could give him a bit more of like a belly. Like he's more out of shape than the young dude. And his arms aren't as muscular and defined. They're thick, but they're not muscular. So you're doing more of that sort of thing. This arm is probably still a bit big, so I tone that down. Not as much definition in the forearms. He likes having a cheeseburger once in a while. He doesn't really follow his macros, so he doesn't have that sort of definition. This guy, I hadn't thought about it in terms of like ape, but I think we're getting that sort of read because it's getting so dark around his eyes. and it gives that sort of impression. So going forwards, that would be one of the things I would look to change, is not letting this get so dark. I mean, his silhouette's going to stand out because he's got so much dark hair. We don't necessarily need all the rest of it to be as dark as well. And so I would be averaging a lot of this to be lighter. And if you want to incorporate some of these other tones, you can, but actually most of this could be a fairly standard color, and might just have slight tonal changes depending on the area and not a massive change. So like if you're the downward facing planes, you might have something like this, where you're looking at brightening them up a lot more instead of letting them get so dark, where the skin is getting to the darkness of his dark hair. And that's not really what we're needing here. Even if we got some like lighter, might have some like light, cooler tones sort in that shadow and letting it brighten that up a little bit. And so you're getting plenty of color in there, and we're not letting it get too dark. And the ears, we don't want to use, you don't want to glaze the light over. If you're going to do the light, then just let it be light. Just let it go white. And then you're looking at using pure color on the ears. We're really simplifying what tones we're using for basically the highest saturation possible for an approach like this. So kind of more of that sort of thing. We've got clearer tonal changes between lighting sources, and things are pure. Okay. Talking about the sword, yeah, the glowing sword isn't really working. And so I would actually be toning this guy down. I would be considering making him slightly more athletic. Leave this guy being, leaving this guy being thicker, but more heavy set. This guy, we could lean him up a little bit and just make him feel more athletic and not necessarily massive. But we need him having a sword that is more balanced for his size. So we need him having a sword that is like this, right? We expect him to have this killer buster sword. Something along like that. And then if you want to add some designs, or maybe that groove that they have, I forgot what it's called, that goes along the sword. If you want that glowing, then you could have a glowing bit there, and then it doesn't break up the overall scene, because right now you're trying to put a glowing sword over a bright background, and that just doesn't really work visually. So this sort of thing would work a lot better. Yeah, if you cover the logo some, I don't think it's a big deal. Or you can play it with the idea that it's a broken sword, right? And that works too. I like your comment. The magic is like covering her face up too much over there, so I would be changing that. We can easily just let the magic be blowing off a different direction and keep it from covering her face. So let's look at doing that change. And to get her eyes to read better, we can let more of her face be kind of silhouetted with a little shadow going across more of her face. Like this. Then the rest of her needs to sort of follow that same pattern lighting wise. So we're going to be playing down all the lights on that portion of her. Then that way the eyes glow better. I forgot to turn off my phone. A minute. Usually they keep spam color. There we go. So that would have a bit clearer read on her and let her stand out better. And you can see the sort of difference that makes, especially if you move some of the magic. Let's see, was there anything else? Going forwards, consider... Yeah, consider kind of committing to some of the colors. I think you're approaching the colors like a little too realistically in some of these cases. So, like, if her dress is blue, then we can just let her dress be more blue, and that's okay. We're not necessarily glazing it with the warmth, and it's the way we talked about in a previous stream where if there's a colored light that's hitting a colored object, for this sort of illustration, you don't glaze to a medium, you just let it become that color. So if there is a warm light down here that is bouncing up on the dress just becomes orange under that area where it's being lit. It doesn't get kind of orange, which would make it gray. It just becomes orange. Right? And that's the way you kind of handle the light on these sorts of things. Same thing with him, where you've got this this purple light, but we really just need to stick to that a bit more. And where all of this just becomes purple. Just lit with purple. Right. Let's see. And kind of going to the background as well. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, well, or look at this over here. It's like, it's warm and cool and it's sort of in the medium. It doesn't have much color. So what nearer pure color can I use in order to example that? I think that it could honestly just be warmer. Like, just let it be warmer. Just let it be a warmer tone. Or if it wants to be cooler, then let it be distinctly cooler. We can keep the same value, but let it be a particular color and not a grayed out kind of wash between multiple colors. And so the columns are distinctly cooler and bluer, and the shadows are particularly green or whatever they are. As long as you keep it consistent, then you can sort of move that around, and that sort of approach goes for all the rest of this. And this way we have brighter, more consistent set of colors that goes across the background, and it doesn't get too grayed out and such.
Yeah, it's always hard to find a balance between really vibrant colors and being then too saturated with your colors. He also said in chat he's very shy with colors, and I totally feel that. And I'm also always struggling. I either have them not vibrant enough or overly saturated, and it's really hard to find that really, really fine degree where it works. I have the feeling.
Yeah, and that takes time. And getting used to using the pure colors like that, it's practice, and you just got to do it. Something that can help is if you do more of a quick study, like getting your piece right here, and then you lower the size, and you do a study on top of it, where it's just, I'm going to use as much pure color as I can, and I'm going to just do a quick guide to block in how that's possible. And then once you have an idea, because it's easier to be bold if you're doing it quickly and you're doing it on a smaller scale. And then once you get an idea of which colors you can use where, then you can go back and start applying that to your proper image, fuller image. Okay, Yaroslava is up next. Or Yaroslava, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And says, Hello, Clint and Anna. Thank you for the critique. It's still a work in progress since time management is my mortal enemy. It's not finished, but you have done a considerable amount of progress on it. What was your impression of this? Oh, also, uh, Yaroslava, maybe you got the hours off a little bit because this was about 45 minutes late, which means that I have not made any comments on it because it wasn't actually submitted on time, and I just noticed that it was submitted afterwards. Make sure we get it in on time, and then I will be able to do a better feedback. Okay, you took a look at this. Anything strike you about the piece going forwards?
Yeah, so I like the composition you pulled through with your idea that you handed in earlier. I like that it is a pyramid kind of composition, which fits the theme very well. So this is a good idea to go for. She really has vibrant, bold colors. She's not afraid. She's not shying away from using color. I think it's also good, and good use of space in general. For looking for improvement, I didn't do a looking for tweaks because she's not finished yet. So just looking for improvement. What would I do? I'd think my first impression was that the middle, especially the middle one, but also the other guys, they're standing there and looking around, but there is no real movement. So I would imagine them being more in really a movement towards us. They're walking, they're coming closer to us, they want to threaten us. So if they're just standing there, it's like, maybe I can pass around them or something. So make them maybe moving towards us, tilt a little bit the upper body, as you did with the other oval painting, that it's a little bit more dynamic and not so straight, symmetrical, flat towards us. So having the shoulders and the hips at different angles, all these things. Clint will do an over paint, or will help you with
Yeah,
that.
I'm doing a little skew of it.
Yeah, you can do a little bit of that. Everything by now is super sharp. Maybe it's because of the sketching phase. So look a little bit into your edge control of everything so that it doesn't look so cut out and more of one and the same environment. Looking at the forms, think about the forms. Maybe do a layer on top, grab a very vibrant red color and do lines over your characters and see what is coming towards us, what is going back, what is folding over, to get an idea on how the bodies and the forms in 3D space work, and then add the lighting on top. Because by now you just did okay, everything below is bright yellow, and from top everything is blue. So use these two colors to deform the shape, describe the shapes, that we see the forms of the bodies. Minor tweaks, you could consider putting the background a little bit more in the 3-point perspective, so that they're a little bit more also having that pyramid shape. Slightly, don't overdo it, so that we have again this pyramid shape also in the background. What else do I have? In general, looking for skill improvement, I'd say do form and value studies. These are the most important. Look close into the fundamentals. Clint has a lot of amazing material on that. Consider buying something from his Gumroad, go to more Kabuchi videos and stuff like that. Get the fundamentals right. And maybe also, because it's now on sale, the painting process. So sometimes when I see paintings like this and I see a very detailed, super rendered face from the middle guy already, and the rest is super sketchy, like really, really at the beginning of the stage, I feel like this person also is not following the right painting process, like jumping into the details of little jewels on top of his hat and stuff like that. without having thought about the rest already till the end. So having more of an understanding of a painting process would help improving your art a lot, is my opinion.
Okay.
Clint. Yeah.
Yeah, having some slight variation in the pose. I also think that if it is a she, I'm not familiar with the name. Does not have the standard sort of MTG, D&D, or even Warcraft style. They naturally approach things in a far more graphical way, and the image is strong due to its graphical approach, not necessarily through its form approach. Now we're usually all about form, and that's what I try to push, but that's not what this is. And that's not wrong, but if you're going that direction with it, then you just need to make real sure that that's what you're doing. And that's what you have to really lean into. Because like the way that they've handled the bit up here with the designs on it, it works really well for this. That sort of 2D flat kind of graphic across a scene like this, it works because it's a shape based, color based image and not necessarily a form based. However, I really like the sense of form that you have with basically there's just a light and shadow pattern, or that there is a simple light to dark gradient across things. I do want to see that continued, so that there's like smaller elements, like maybe just the shoulder joint sort of shape has its little gradient there. And so you're getting and following that same sort of pattern throughout the image, but you're not necessarily trying to do you're not trying to do MTG. That's not what this needs. The 3 point of having the columns leaning in could be nice, give a little more of the tilt to it, or having some sort of ceiling or pillars or something kind of arcing up there behind. That could work as well. Just kind of filling in some of that black and giving it a little more, giving it something other than just a flat sort of black to it could be good. With this guy at an angle and this guy straight on, I feel like this guy's face probably shouldn't be looking right at us. I would turn him a little bit so that his mouth is either downwards a little bit, his head is tilted down a little bit, or it's turned slightly to a side. I think so. I'm not sure how they would normally keep refining it. I do feel like we do need to have some more light on the top of this character, because it's just getting a bit dark. And if it, for the project being a board game cover, it would probably be getting toned down a bit in the printing process. So I would say just bumping that up with, I'm just using a little dodge tool here just to pop that out a bit more for the sake of legibility. Or we had talked about, and you don't have to do this, but having some sort of other light that is coming down that helps to kind of tell some of the forms up there, an option as well. I think you're having a cape here, but it's really, really difficult to make out. So if you want to have that, which I'm kind of a fan of, because it's a nice broken shape that is a bit different than the other really solid shapes, but we need to push that up. And so if you want to use some like these same violet tones that won't be quite as bright as his tones, then that could look really nice. And so I would lean into that idea that you've got. and just let that sell really well. And that's beautiful. And then we could just let that get a bit darker because it's not solid now. You've kind of got that cape there. You might even let the cape like hang off from the front a little bit so you can kind of get the idea of how that's forming around him. Doing kind of this sort of thing. Look nice. Little whatever, you probably get to it as well, but mimicking the same sort of designs that you have down here with just some like triangle. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking. It really just I would stay with the sort of shape graphic way that you're doing it. You've got a good color scheme, a really, really beautiful sort of color scheme going on, and not sticking out of that. I would stay within that range and just continuing developing, finding good shapes for the stuff back here, even if they're not even legible. You know, the other person had bats, and that's not even a bad idea on this one as well. Having some like bat shapes to sort of break up the pillars some, then that would give a nice sort of radiating pattern out from there. Okay, well, I'll wrap it up on that one. We'll move on. Hopefully you find that useful, and I really do want to see where you take that going forwards. Kayla is up next. All right, Kayla. Oh, little pause there on the computer. Kayla says, there is still so much more I want to fix and to do with this, but this is where I've gotten to. This is definitely one of the most complex images I've attempted. I also found reference that I've got to add to this template, so I'm sorry they're a bit out of date. Thank you again for taking the time. Yeah, really excellent progress. A lot of the stuff that we talked about last time implemented. We turned things away from being completely straight to us, giving a bit more angle, a bit more volume view of it. Lit the background a bit different, so we have a different set of colors going on back there. So I'm liking how this is developing. I would agree. Different areas just need more polish, more details, that sort of thing. But sort of details aside, what are you thinking as far as any problems that might want to be addressed at this stage, Anna?
Yeah, so I also really like this piece. Another one that you could imagine having on the box already at the store. She is very good at was it a she? Yeah,
Kayla,
was
yes.
it Kayla, yeah. She's really good at rendering. The characters are looking very well, and they all have really their own specifics. She is really good at that already. For little tweaks, what I first would change a little bit is she is super tiny in comparison to the guy on the left. So I'd consider making him a tad smaller and scale her up. We told her to put her more back into the background because she was super close to us in the last submission, and I think it was a tiny step too far. So it is a good direction and of improvement. I'd bring her a little bit more back to us. So just to have like not look her like a child. I think she's not supposed to be a child. She has boobs and all, so I consider her being an adult, and then I would scale her up a little bit that she looks not so tiny. For further improvement, I'd say I'm not sure about the foreground. So everyone was putting these mummies in the foreground to have a foreground and to add these attacking mummies. I'm not sure whether maybe not just taking them out or having something else there, because again I don't feel like it's part of the image. They feel so squeezed into there, and maybe just having one, only the one on the left or something. I don't know, I changed something about that. And maybe tilting the snake a little bit more towards us, so a tad more. But this might be personal preference and maybe not being that improvement for the painting in general. It's just minor tweaks. For general skill improvement, I'd say she is really good with anatomy and the forms of the body and the face already. I can see she studied that a lot already. The rest is a little bit lacking. Like the snake is not rendered as not didn't receive much love yet. So the scales and the coins and there is not much going into the detail yet. So I don't know whether she's missing something in her visual library or whether she didn't have time to find references for that. Maybe working on these things a little bit more, like working on your backgrounds, objects, stuff like this, because the bodies and the persons are really, really good. So we are talking about skill improvement in general. So I'd go more into studies of these. And yeah, I think she's already in the position to say, okay, I can pick an art parent. So go there, do some studies, master studies, to see what a more post-production, I call it, when you have your main painting finished, and then there's this, what gives it the last touches, the last push, so that you have like really this, I don't know, splash art feeling or something like that, that you say, wow, this is great, this piece. So, and I think she is in really close to getting there, and she should just pick a parent and say, okay, this is the style I want to head for, and do some studies on that, master studies, copies, trying tweaks or stuff like that. This could push her art, to my opinion, even further.
Yes. Okay, that was a lot. I can't remember all that you
Sorry,
said, but
maybe I also did.
yeah, there's
talk
things like the
nonsense.
coins and the snake scales, the rendering on the mummies. I'm assuming that Kayla's going to have that all part of her refining process, because those are not up to the level of the characters. Now, thinking about the size of the character, I'm with you. Like, if she had changed the anatomy so that it's a girl and not developed as much as a woman, I'd be okay with that. I think her size and the idea that one of them is a girl, I'm okay with that, and I think you'd leave it. But if you are going to make her a woman, then we probably do want to just scale her up. 10% even would make a decent difference. With the other elements, some other things that kind of caught me. One of the things that's really not working and not driving with the rest is the way the hieroglyphics have been added. They are just really detailed, really sharp, and it's obviously some sort of photo based or custom brush or something. And the level of visual fidelity on them does not match that of the rest of the scene. And so we need to get rid of those and just paint in some designs, or just take them out and just have some sort of architectural design on it. Because that style isn't used anywhere else, and it doesn't really mesh with the painterly style. So that has to be done. Some other things that I was looking at include on her hair here, and her hair is just hanging down equally on both sides, which doesn't really make sense. And so if it's sort of floating around, you're going to be looking at more of the flopping around while she's moving. They're not going to be completely the same on each side. So one of them is going to be kind of going one way, one another. And then you got to think about kind of where her head was. And then she pulls, one of them is going to be lagging, right? And so she's going to be pulling it up. So That would change a little bit on that pose. I'm looking at maybe adding a cast shadow. I feel like it's a little odd that she doesn't have any cast shadow on this serpent. And it would just make the two of them feel like they're interacting better. Because right now they don't really interact too much. It's two different objects. Also finding a more interesting shape for the old man's hat. Doing a bit more of this sort of thing. Right? Instead of just the perfect wide brim that's completely static. A lot of these sorts of hats have some sort of curve to them. So I'd be doing that just to get that basic shape and do a slightly more interesting version of that shape. I'm probably thinking up his leg as well. Like, if his arm is this beefy, I'm thinking his thigh is probably going to be at least that beefy. Okay, other things. On the mummies right now, we don't have them with anything threatening. So having like a blade here, maybe another mummy hand with a dagger, that sort of thing. This fella has an exceptionally long neck. And I think you probably need to look at how one of those pieces goes around the neck. It doesn't really drop down right now. It's like dropping down to the middle of the back. It doesn't really do that. It sets way up high, right? And then folds down in the front. So you're going to have the shoulders more up here, and then that piece is going to be more like that, up around there. Okay. Oh, if we're going to have like all the extra eyes on the snake, my initial thought would be to just change it so that he's got like another eye right here. So you automatically make it feel like it's different with a third eye in the middle. And another thing would be, you've got this snake that is a white snake in an area that's really well lit. So I would be pushing this one way or the other. One thing to consider is that it might actually work good if it was a black snake. That shape would show up really well against a lot of the other light elements. Or if it's going to be a white snake, I would go ahead and let it actually be a lot brighter on the top. And then embrace more of the bluer tones down there. And so that there's a much clearer separation of the light and shadow between them. And here it's not so much. Yeah. So yeah, on that line. Then in the mouth, doing more of the illustrative mouth, of like you're pushing the red tones, right? And you're simplifying the anatomy there in the mouth. This guy's just feeling maybe a little too thin. Like he's super skinny. So let's just beef him up slightly. Like he's still going to be the thin guy. But I feel like he wouldn't hardly even be able to hold himself up. So just give a little room for a bicep there. A little more here. Like, he doesn't even have a waist. He's almost paper thin. And just letting him have a bit more body. Okay. And I don't know if you base this on Wesley from The Princess Bride or not, but he definitely has that vibe to him. So I would add a bit more to him, just to make him feel slightly more heroic. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I approach it. Overall, I really like the use of the colors. I like the saturation of them. You've got 3 completely different characters, and I think overall it works well as a game kind of box art style. Any final thoughts on this, Anna?
No.
No?
I think you did all very well. So I'm looking forward. I hope people will really post their final pieces on the Facebook group. So use that opportunity.
Okay, next we have Dowel. And here we go. This one I think is coming along really well. It's got a nice level of polish to it. He even did a mock-up of what it would look like on a box, and create a little Swatches game logo right down there. Very nice. So really, really well rendered piece. I think on the whole it's working quite effectively. But some things could use a little work. What's your list of ideas or observations here?
Yeah, so I also like the polish and the rendering really much in this piece. It's really nice. It has clean edges. There's good anatomy. The creatures are very varied. That's also very good design of the creatures. So some have a little bit more clothes, the other less, and are more
Mm-hmm.
skeletons. It's a very good sense for variation. And background also feels like the right amount of detail, like not too detailed and not too rushed. So she Meadow, I don't know, he had a really good feeling for that. So looking for tweaks, I would raise some of the darker values, especially on the main character. She was going for that look of her references for the lighting direction. This might, I don't know, this might be what was his name of that artist? I'm not sure. But he used also a lot of blacks. I see that with a really bright background.
Well, that's a
And
woo, isn't it?
yeah, Bayard Wu was it? Yeah.
Bayard woo, right?
So, but when you look closely, or when you look at it, you see what was the focal point, and the focal point is not that dark, and that's her
Mm-hmm.
face and upper body. He chose to give that bright values because we want to look at it and immediately see what is that. It's really tiny in my version right now, but I see her face. I can make out her face still, even though everything around her is black and not as directly visible from a small thing. So he has a really good control of that. And I wish for her piece to have that in the same amount. So I'd say the main character, especially the face and the upper body, need more brighter values and more midtones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Push the lighting of the magic on her face and body, for example. Also, her chest piece would receive some light of that. So this was my main concern with this piece, where I said, okay, it's super dark in the foreground. Give her more top light or anything. Put her more into bright values. Um, Looking for further improvements is I would exchange the hand in the foreground with a more skeletal hand. Also, the angle should maybe more. I think it is supposed to be towards us, like grabbing towards us, which is a nice idea. But by now the hand looks a little bit weird anatomically to me, and it threw me off. So even if it's correct or taken from a photo, I think it's not the best choice for this painting. Maybe something going directly upwards or towards her, because he's maybe receiving her call or something, would work better here. Also, the dog is a little bit, yeah, not as well rendered as the rest of the painting. So I'd give him also a little bit more love. I'm also not sure. He looks at the wrong angle, perspective, in the perspective. So I don't know, maybe make him
Mm-hmm.
run or jump or something, because by now his legs are cut off, and I'm just not happy with that decision of her yet. So I'd change the dog below. Yeah, but other than that, maybe for the future, some value studies because of that really dark values, and she can also like go for more post productive things, and picking a art parent, and maybe the edge work, because the characters in the background have the same sharpness as the one in the foreground, and yeah, what edges to have sharp, which ones to you can have a little bit more blurred out. That control is the next thing I'd consider studying if I was her.
Okay, good observations. Really, Anna. Good points. A lot of the same ones from my side. Yeah, I would change the hand. I don't think the hand is a bad decision, but it is too symmetrical at that angle. And when I look at it in the thumbnail, it takes me a moment to figure out what it is. I'd be looking at having more of this so that some of the fingers are starting to bend, and then some of the fingers are straighter, and that would break it up a little bit. Or following what you said, which was actually letting the hand be turned slightly, so it's not perfect like this, but it's more like that. Then that would work. And if you want to put that in there, you could even have some more hands in the background, so it becomes a bit more of a pattern thing and not just one hand. And that way we have a clearer understanding of what's going on with it. One of the major changes I would make is what she said, which isn't a repainting, but it's a change of the values of brightening this character up. We can keep her separated from the background easily, even if we bring up the values some. She has a distinctly different color scheme, and she's distinctly darker. And even if we moved her by 2 values, she's still going to be standing out just fine. I ran a exposure layer here and just push up the exposure. I think you can see the sort of difference that makes, that they all stand out just fine. And you can also see that when you get it up in value a little bit, you can also get more saturation out of it. So I also ran a little vibrance change on it as well. And so instead of just getting darker, they actually can just get bluer and more vibrant. And so you're using color and value at the same time. I do want to second Anna's thought here of letting the magic be more of a light source. And so on her, on this side of the face where the magic is, letting those planes share that light. And then things like the side of that hand could have more of that light. And this part of the body could have more of that light. And this could have some. This would actually help develop this part of the body more, because you're working it in terms of planes, which is going to bring out a better sense of the volume of the character. And you're not just relying on the little fill light, you're letting this be a light source. And I could let this go out a bit further. And artistically, we could just let the edges of the hand here show up a little bit more in silhouette, and not worry about whether it's completely accurate or not, but they could kind of show up like this and be a little bit clearer. And you see where we get more color that way, and it doesn't stop her from standing out of the background. With the exposure, I'm also looking at brightening up a lot of this area down here, because a lot of this gets to be the same value all the way down, but we could have that getting brighter down there, and that would be nice. This is also getting a little washed out back here, and normally I'm against having big kind of flat tones, but I think you can get away with it a little bit more. This background light coming across here, so that it actually brings out some of these shapes a little bit. I don't think you necessarily need more contrast in the pillars and stuff themselves, but in some of that negative space, we could actually have it a bit brighter and have some more separation this way, and just keep it from having to be quite so washed out. Let's see, did I have any more thoughts?
How did you do the exposure thing, is asked by the artist.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me run you through that. What I did was just, I'll move this over here. I just made a new layer there. I went over here, I went to exposure with the adjustment layer, and then you can go over to properties, and exposure right here. I can move the exposure up wherever I want it, move that back out of the way. Then it automatically creates a mask when you do an adjustment layer. I'm actually going to inverse it so it's all black. That way it's not applied to anything. Then anything that I paint with white onto the mask will apply that exposure. And then I can just do that. And then if I want to saturate up everything in this new area, what I can do is just go to Vibrance. And then I can go to its settings and I can push up the vibrance, I can push up the saturation. And then instead of having to do the mask again, I can just click Option and drag it up to duplicate that mask onto the new one. And then it's applying the vibrance to the exact same area that we created for the exposure. And that way we're not just raising the value of the area, but we're actually raising the saturation with it, which is a proper way that it needs to go up. Now that it's brighter, it should be more saturated. And exposure does that some. It will saturate it up a bit as it brightens it, but I find that you often need to push it a little extra. And so that could get you started, and then you might want to go in and paint the differences in a little bit, kind of massage that change in, make sure that's working. But yeah, the exposure layer can be a really great way to make quick light and dark changes. Like if you want to shadow something down or brighten something up, it can do a rough version of that quite quickly. All right. Yeah, another very successful piece. Probably one of, if not the most finished of the lot that we have that was submitted, and the one that's probably the most print ready, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, really cool one.
Thomas is up next. And Thomas says, almost got to everything I wanted in this. Fun challenge. You pointed out last time about his mouth and gums. I mostly matched a croc's mouth, which doesn't have lips and gums. I still try to give it the form needed, took some liberties with the tongue. I think the hardest part for me was bending the rules of light and color to make the background in this style. Normally I wouldn't cut off the sword, but I felt it was okay. Yeah, I don't think that's an issue in this case. Curious on your thoughts. So overall, quite successful. Excellent use of vibrant colors and good contrast going on. But perhaps some tweaks here or there. Where would you start thinking about putting in some tweaks if it was dropped in your lap, Anna?
Yeah, so really nice improvement also on this one. I also like the rendering and especially of the guys in the foreground. The right guy already looks really good. With the left one, I still feel like the jaw of him is a little bit too big for the rest of the head. But either way, the rendering is very good. Oh, it's my dog in the background. Sorry. For the alligator's mouth, I see what the struggle is. Still, also the alligator's inside of the mouth has a form inside. So I'd consider taking the photo and again taking a red pencil or something and go over the forms, because it's a little bit coming out. In the middle it's going up again, and if you have that, then the light that is coming from inside should also mimic that form. So there is still a shape inside there. And he improved it already, but I think he could even push it a little bit further. It is hard because there is not much you can get an orientation for in the alligator's mouth.
Yeah.
But so I know this is really a struggle. But maybe Clint, you have an idea or a tip, or can show him what the forms inside that mouth should look like. One thing I'm not sure about is the usage of the blue. I'm not good with color theory at this point, but I felt like the green and the purple are working really well together. The blue with green as well, with purple as well, but not with all of them together. So yeah, I'm giving that question over to you. What the color? What's about the color in this piece? So I just can say I'm not quite sure whether I would have chosen that colors. Yeah, the last thing that I think is especially visible on his chest and the arms is that he put the green light very evenly over all of the planes, but rather could have used them to describe each of the single planes. It's a little bit hard to do this with words now. I would also paint it in this moment. So
Yeah.
it's not all at the same thickness. No? It goes around the form, and then there's maybe a little bit of space left in between where, for example, one muscle ends and the other starts. And maybe Clint, you can show this better while painting. Also on the chest piece, it looks a little bit flat and not so rounded. So I would use that light a little bit more to describe the forms more. But that's already all of my nitpicky things that I have on this piece.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are with this one, Thomas. We're getting to some pretty minor nitpicky stuff. It is, largely speaking, it could be considered a finished image. And if you want to continue working on it, feel free. And these are some ideas, but I could see it being a finished image as is. Yeah, like the blue on the mouth and the eyes. I mean, I'm prone for the sake of what this is, and because it's kind of like geared towards kids. And with kids stuff, it is more about just color than necessarily a really strict color scheme. I would let it go. I could see if you wanted to change it to being purple or green, that would make sense. But I'm not gonna mark you for using it as a kind of a discordant color against the scheme. So that would be up to you. I do suggest making some changes to the mouth region, but maybe not even necessarily with the anatomy of the mouth. So let's look at some stuff you can do here. One of the things that I would consider is moving away from the reality of a crocodile's mouth a bit and going a bit more the fantasy, which means we've got some twice as big teeth. We've got some mythological croc here. This guy's not this is like some sort of demigod, right? I mean, he's powered by magic, and he's really powerful and big, and his teeth could be, I would go with like half as many teeth, but twice as big. That way they have this really good read from a distance. More of this sort of thing. And with the eye, maybe looking at kind of giving a bit more shape to the eye. Right now it's just this flat shape, and we could be using a little tone in order to kind of build an area around the eye and suggest like some form around the eye with a bit of that glow. If we're all going with the undead, I would be pushing with more of this sort of thing where he's got the tears of the light in this sort of thing here. And he might have skin that's sort of hanging off where he's starting to do some rotting. And we would want to continue that elsewhere where he's got like patches of skin that's sort of pulling off, and he's got the colored veins that sort of go down in between the muscles, and we see like layers of some little sinew and stuff down on the inside of it. If you go in more of that way. And with the tongue is where we could get some more action, and having the tongue doing something more like that. Like, we're thinking more like a T-Rex roaring. And so now we've got the end of the tongue sort of coming up here, and we've got more of a form of it doing this. And the tongue's got more action, not just laying down in his mouth. Like that. We feel like there's more roar there. And we could put in, if you wanted to, go to like spittle coming out of his mouth. Coming off of here. Yeah. And that sort of thing. With the forms here on the body, yeah, you have that greener light down here, but I would push further with it so that the metallic objects are allowed to have a proper specular light on them. You're not really running the specular light. You're letting it have about the same as the skin, which is keeping them from feeling entirely metallic. And metal can basically have 100% reflection at the right angle. And so things like this and things like the sword blade could have a really nice bright highlight on them to make them feel a bit more like metal. This also has a design. I would push the design a little bit. Again, kind of like looking at the references and seeing, like, if you're going to have shoulder pieces, you know, looking at that sort of approach. So over here, maybe looking at the way that they put jewels in a radiating pattern going around on the chest. And maybe so there's another piece here that follows that sort of approach of these sorts of designs. And on the neck, maybe he's got one of these things that has the stripes on it that hangs down on either side, and it kind of goes up over his head. That could work as well. I'm just trying to get a little more Egyptian out of it on some of the designs, and not just a basic. I mean, that's almost a Greek style chest piece, and so we're looking for slightly more Egyptian there. Let's see what else. And yeah, and like what Anna was saying, that you could be using the some of the light to indicate form a little more. So some areas are catching like this, so it feels like that muscle's coming out a bit more, and then other ones going back some. And then that's maybe more shaded, and then it comes down to this muscle and it picks up a little bit more. And so you can develop the form slightly more if you push that light some. This light could even be pushed more, this sort of secondary light, and help develop the forms, because we're losing a lot of the forms there. His silhouette would still show up if you did that. And I'd be thinking about adjusting maybe some of the silhouette here, so that he has a sharper set of angles along there on his face. And also a brightness change here. The background's getting a bit grayed out, so you can see if you just punch that up a little bit, this is a brightness contrast adjustment. And so it looks like that, and then a little exposure down on the front of these guys. Lots of really good decisions as far as the shapes and the stuff rendering going on with those guys. And I would just put a little extra light there, and I just used a exposure layer to pop those guys out a little bit. Okay, a lot of stuff there. Anna, any wrapping up thoughts on this one?
It's a really, really solid piece, and I'm very looking forward to see it on the group. Go for it.
Yeah. Comment here actually says the red-green mix makes the color of the metal kind of muddy. I actually thought about that. I don't know that we actually even need it to be that reddish. I think that a lot of this metal could actually be done right just within a green range. I think that you could use almost all greens on this metal and it would work pretty well. Oh, and I would make an adjustment of having like some bounce light hitting the top of this guy's thing, so there's some angle difference between the top and the side. A little too similar. Good stuff, good stuff. I'm glad you joined it. Hopefully you picked up some tips, and good to see you pushing yourself with a challenge. All right, next one up is Thomas. I'm not sure what the inflection is difference there, but oh my gosh, huge difference from the concept to what you have here. This is a really nice progression. We were talking about this a bit before the stream, and we both just thought that you listened to a lot of the feedback and implemented it well. So what's a couple of things that he might be looking at making some adjustments, or maybe study-wise things that he might want to be focusing on after this, Anna?
Yeah, so I also think he went for a much better composition and more dynamic. We don't have this flat looking down on something as in the first one. It's and he wants to show us that we are looking up to the creature. We can see that in his head. Yeah, and he pushed through. He has a good background for it, and I really like the progression he made on this piece. For minor tweaks, I'd say I think that the main creature is a little bit too big. We should scale it down because it is like standing with the feet on the edge at the lower edge, and the head is bumping into into the Tomb of the Sphinx. Title, so to speak. So I think making him a little bit smaller and filling the back. Oh, my dog! And filling the background with something else would be a better thing here. Going from there, I'd say he's super bulky, which is okay, but I think some of the roundness of the muscles we could maybe... No, give me that ball, dog. No, it's my dog. So the roundness of the muscles could maybe get a little bit more pushed in. He's a little bit too stiff. He looks stiff with these kind of muscles around, and it was a really hard one for me to critique. I must say that I really thinking about what is the thing that is most important that would push your art further. So scaling down, working a little bit on the bulkiness of the muscles, having a look into the values a little bit, because by now we have this overall same value on the character, with just the darkest places where something is on top and the other is below. So there is the what was the term? Occlusion shadow. There's just occlusion shadow really much, and the rest is the same. A little bit bright, a little bit dark. I would work a little bit on the lighting, and I think it's a good progression. Maybe the it was Clint also saying in the last challenge reviews, with the looking up to a creature. What I think he might have tried here, the belt is giving us a way that we are not looking up on him. So the head is an angle in the right angle, and the upper chest also pretty much. But the belt gives again a way that we are looking down on the character because it's going in that shape. But Clint can show this a little bit better, I think.
Okay, good points. Good points. And yeah, the pose-wise and the size of the character, you do have a couple of options here, Thomas. And one isn't necessarily the right one, but I do suggest that you pick one and implement it. And that is, he does feel squished between the logo and the bottom of the page. And so a couple of the options that I would consider is, one, we can scale his whole body down a bit because he's really squatting down a lot. And then if we scale down his upper body, then we actually allow him to be able to stand up a little bit more. I mean, I still like the bended knees because he's like ready to attack and he's got his knees bent. But this is more like he's doing a squat. He's going way deep. And so if we minimize the size of the top half, and it's more like this, and his waist is up here, and we allow his legs to straighten out a bit more this way. So that's one option. The other option is you're just saying, I don't necessarily need all of his legs in the image, but you don't really. And then you can just let his legs go off the bottom of the image that way. And that's no biggie. We don't necessarily have to see the floor's edge back there. We can just treat this like there's a series of steps and he's standing on one of the steps. That's fine. Or we just get the sarcophagus and we just let it run down through the end of the image. Yeah, and that's fine too. But that would correct a lot of the stuff kind of going on with the size and the spacing of the character. Anna does point out the belt. The belt is what trips up a lot of people, where it's very natural that you draw the belt going downwards, because generally if you're looking at somebody, you're looking down on their belt, and so that's the way that we draw it. But in this case, we are looking up at the character. And so we want to make sure that that belt is going upwards. Even if you look at your image here, the belt is at least flat. So we want to make sure it's at least flat and that we're not looking down on it. And that's really going to help you keep a consistent angle for the image as you're looking upwards. Talking about the environment, I'm feeling like, I can't remember what we said last time. And maybe I'm actually changing what I said last time. I don't remember. But I feel like if we actually point the ceiling here or curve the ceiling, it's going to give a better feeling than the flat. So I think that would be a more engaging environment to have the ceiling vaulted rather than flat. And because it basically becomes this series of radiating lines around, concentric lines around the head, and that brings attention down to the head more than I think this does. So that's something I would consider doing, is making that sort of change. Let's see what else. I like the commitment to the orange-green color scheme. I think that can work for this image. And you keep it nice and saturated, so that's nice. And I'd be staying with that. Also like the commitment to actually making a little figurine in order to help you with the pose and the lighting. That's nice. And that's usually what you do. You have a combination of like multiple kinds of subjects to reference in order to draw it correctly. What? Oh yeah, talking about the value scheme, like if we do a black and white adjustment layer to it, so much of it is running in the same sort of value scheme. It's all a mix of midtones, and so we want to look at what we could do to sort of separate that out. And I'm thinking that with the character being in the foreground like this, the background already looks pretty dark. And so it's letting more of him be lighter. I just said that he's more well illuminated. So we want to play down any of the darks in any of the sides that are being lit. So he might have a kind of a shadow in between the light side and some of this edge green glow. But everything else needs to be getting a bit lighter. So on the whole, he's a bit brighter than the background. And so like him as a overall shape in a unit is a bit lighter than the background, which also might mean that you tone down a little of the light in the background. You're just kind of averaging it out a little bit to be a bit darker, and you're averaging him out to be a little lighter. And we're just simplifying sort of the value scheme going on there. So, excellent progress. Keep at it. Would love to see you join the next challenge. And you're obviously committed to doing what you need. You make your models, you take your photographs, you do your concepts, you do a variety of different value studies and all that. So keep at it. Wrap it up on that one. We've got Tyler Vell's last one to take a look at here. Is Tyler in the chat?
I think I haven't seen him yet.
All right. He's usually here, so I was just checking. Hello, hope you don't mind if I didn't use pose reference. I feel like the figures were working well enough, and if I used one, it would take away from it being stylized and make them stiff. Thanks for the feedback. This is one of those cases. Tyler is at a level where he can draw cartoony sort of poses like this without, much reference. And so I'm not really going to hold that against him. He's doing pretty well. This is another practically finished piece that is close to being print ready. I think it fulfills the challenge really, really well. But as with all pieces, there's always room for improvement, no matter how much time and how good you are. So Anna, looking at this, where are some places to maybe put some attention and stuff maybe that as a viewer kind of is catching you a little bit?
Yeah, so I must say everything I'm gonna say is, of course, nitpicky things because it's a really, really good piece and I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy the design a lot. I think it's the strongest design we have in this challenge, at least to my liking, because I really like that with the armor and the skinniness of the main character. So I really, really like the design of the main character. It's a good concept. Nitpicky things to say. First, I think, again, his face is the focal point, and I feel like it's not rendered yet to the point that I'd like to have it, in the meaning of the values are very similar all over the headpiece and the face. And it gives a little bit of a washed out feeling. So I would try to push edges and values a little bit more in the focal area. Having some stuff darker, having the glowing effect stronger, have a little bit more contrast in there. Might be personal liking, but these, what are you doing? These are my ideas on that. The second thing is the rim lights. I am a little bit confused why the rim light is suddenly white when the light in the background is purple. So it's not consistent.
I think he's just going with a really bright intensity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. It's one of those things that's not realistic, but it is common for this kind of art.
Okay, so then he should stick with that. It's just my first thoughts that I'm sharing. So I'm not a professional for game art or something like that. It's just my personal thoughts. What I also want to say is there are some tangents in this painting which might not be major, but I just realized them immediately when I looked at the painting. The first one I see is on the left side between the bandage, I don't know what it is called, and the hand of the creature in the
Yeah, I was
background.
looking at that one too.
The leg and the bandage on the right side of the painting. So the leg of the creature in the
Oh,
midground on the
yes.
right
Yeah.
side is completely following, and another is with the creature in the background, where it's exactly ending the creature where the stuff is starting, or where the stuff is, yeah, placed at. And one more thing, but I'm not sure. Neck and the armor of the main character, you might keep it like that. I just think for the silhouette, it might have been good to have the legs separate, whether or not. So these are my main concerns. And for future development, I'd say the same thing as I did with the others. So and do some studies on these, because this art is, I think, really just a step before being able to get printed and commissioned. And so it's just a post-productional thing, my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not having the pro eyes here. That's what we have Clint for, but it's my personal opinion as an artist. Yeah.
Okay, good feedback. And the way that it's working is like, it's almost like this guy on the left side is leaning back to avoid the bandages, both on his head and with his hand. And so we need to adjust that so it doesn't look like he's interacting with something on a different plane. And we also have like, this is coming down right on the level of that guy's back. And guys, when you get a scene that has this much stuff going on, tangents get really easy to accidentally make. And that just happens, and usually just have to set aside time where you intentionally are just looking for tangents and having to fix them. Because naturally they just occur when you start putting in a bunch of different stuff. Okay. Like this guy's leg back here meeting in with like the same shape as this armor piece. I'd probably change that. You might just take out this bottom piece of the armor and then let the leg be there. It might serve a little better. And you can move this fabric around easy enough, however you want, to avoid the tangents over there. I am with you, Anna. The face needs to really hold the best. And one of the things that's sort of bugging me with this is that the headpiece and the snake up here show almost a 3/4 angle, somewhere between front and 3/4. But the face is completely straight to us. So it's kind of odd that like you've got the headpiece here, but the headpiece doesn't follow the actual angle of the head. I mean the face. And so we need to either make this match the exact angle of the face, or we need to make the face slightly turned and just have his eyes cutting back a little bit with the change there. And that would be good. And I'm looking at adding a bit more of a solid tone to the face. You've got the glowing mouth, you've got the glowing eyes. So more of this can be a more solid tone. Probably somewhere in this bluish range. And same thing with the teeth. The teeth have this green tint to them that really doesn't match with anything else. And so we can use more of just kind of the gray tint from the rest of the body. We don't really need to establish a tongue. You can just have this purplish sort of glow in there. And we might do it on the nostrils as well. And be sure that you're using plenty of light around these sort of sources. Because if you're just glazing that sort of white over top of something, it's just going to completely desaturate it. It's not going to have any visual punch to it. We want to make sure that, especially in project like this, that you're running with a lot of saturation around your light sources like that. And so it's just got a clearer step of values there. Same thing with the paper. The paper is getting quite muddy, and it's one of those things where we just need to go back and clean it up. And so you're looking at having a much cleaner shape here. It can have like a gradation of this is a little bit darker and a little bit warmer, but then as it proceeds, it gets a little lighter and a little cooler. And if you do want to have some detail on it, you're mainly looking at just breaking the shape up so that it has little tears along the edges somewhere. And not a lot of this little light and dark kind of fuzziness, because the way that it's lit right now, it almost feels rounded because you shade both sides coming in. And if you look at like these other ones, it's got a much flatter tone to it. Looking at these, much flatter tone to it, and they're using the shape of the outside to carry a lot of the information on the fabric. And I think that's what you need to do in order to really wrap up this piece, make it feel more professional. We're going to just simplify these into simpler shapes and just go one by one. And it would take a little while, but it wouldn't take that long. So I'm just sit down, put on a movie, and just go back and just clean all these up so they're a lot smoother. And you don't necessarily need to have black lines between them. So like if you look over here, there aren't black lines between all these to separate them. And they're not a fuzzy line. It's like maybe this one is just back inside a little further. And so he mainly just has a difference of value that sort of separates him from the other ones. And then this one goes back to being a little bit brighter. And again, we're not really trying to put fuzzy lines around all of them. And once you do like a clean pass, then you go back and you do this sort of edge stuff where you're breaking the edges up some and you're letting it have little spots torn out of it and that sort of thing. But all of this, you want to do that. And you just want to clean all of these up into simple bandages. Same sort of thing back here on these guys. Let's just make these cleaner tones with simple, soft gradations. And then the edge detail. That is one way that you're going to just really step up the clearness of it. And it's the same sort of thing that we can do with almost all of this. It's like looking at something like this and going, okay, well, this whole piece here is going to have a simple gradient. And this piece is too. This piece is going to get a little darker at the top. It's going to get lighter as it comes down. And then I'm going to just take out a lot of the little randomness in there. And it follows a simple gradient. And I'm going to clean up all the edges there. This is going to stick to this value. This is going to stick to this value. And you can see the sort of difference this makes. It's not sort of a color. It is that color. Now, what you've done here is excellent. Same sort of approach. But instead of kind of fading it lighter, it is just gone. It's either gold or it's violet. But it's not kind of gold and violet. And that's part of this style, is that it really commits to one or the other. And here I like the variation of the violet. Like some is more red, some is darker and more blue. And you've got things like this color up here. It's coming back piece by piece. What do you think about this sort of change? Don't you think this would make a big difference as far as just the professional clarity of the image?
Yeah, I think especially the changes on the face are really good tips. I wouldn't have come up with that, but I think that helps a lot because now it has more contrast in it and more interest and doesn't look so flat and washed out. And also on the armor, this style is a little bit more cartoony. So we don't have to render like each and every little scratch and piece and
Yeah.
whatever. So the visual message is number one, and we want the people to look at it and immediately understand what they are seeing. And this is the
Yeah.
first goal. This is the first step. And I think this way you can reach that very quickly.
Yep. I'm with you there on that. Let's see, what was some of my other observations? Even like this statue back here, I like the statue, but we could even push it further with a bit more clarity of light and saturation of light. I'm going to grab a bit of a deeper orange there. And it doesn't necessarily need to be everywhere, but I would pick out a couple of points here and let those really sing a bit better. We'd have that underlip there. And that feels more interesting. It has a better pop of color and light, that sort of thing. Yeah, you got to work with the tangents here, and you can do that a couple of different ways. Like you can just put more like smoke back there, and this can be in more shadow. And so you could fix the tangent that way without necessarily reposing. You're just kind of adjusting the lighting to make that happen. Down on the coins, I'd be thinking about doing the coins where it's either... do we have coins in one of these? No. Okay. It's either like lit, where it's perfectly doing the light, or not. We're not really getting small reflections on each coin. You're basically treating each coin in one ellipse. And it is, is it catching the light or is it not catching the light? If you have any kind of little variation, it's just you've got a highlight on the edge. And the edge would be the only real difference. And we need some of those that is catching the light more. And so I'd be getting a pop of that in there. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, on some of the gems, like on this guy down here, we could have a nice bright light hitting like this side. Maybe a little less on those two. And then it gets nice and dark, pretty much the way that you've got it in this section, but then it gets really bright on the opposite side of where the light comes in, because it pulls on the opposite side. Anna's been learning about that sort of thing in materials course.
Hey. And you can too, soon.
Yeah, hopefully. And so you can do that, and you can even have like a secondary, like if there was a cool light there too, and that allows you to pop in some tone there, and it might show that side as well. So we can just really make the gems and the metal kind of have a bit more gleam to it that way, and follow the style as sort of artwork, and doing some value change to like get the edge of that chest. I like the chest here, but he's not showing up very well, so we can just make some little changes and like let that pop out. Yeah, it's just literally about getting what you already have and cleaning up the edges and simplifying some of the details and the shapes and the outlines of stuff. And kind of seeing what they did on that one. So, very good. And we're running a little later than I wanted. But that wraps up this review. I wanted to quickly cover what the new challenge is again for anybody that missed that at the beginning of the stream. So a quick recap is we're kicking off a new challenge. If you want to be part of the challenge, get the reviews like this. Then tickets will be going up on sale tomorrow at about noon Central Standard Time. And there'll be 6 tickets then, and about 12 hours later, there'll be 6 more tickets. The tickets are $20, and you get a feedback 2 weeks in when you submit your concept, and you get another feedback in the live stream 2 weeks after that when we look at the finals like we are here. And the challenge is your choice between either a MTG Planeswalker, a fictional Planeswalker. We're treating it as if we're, Magic is introducing a new Planeswalker for a new plane. And this guy's named Asheron Thousand Dawn. And he is a white, or kind of like holy, powered monk with white and gold robes. He's in a landscape of spiral-like mountains that are very moody with kind of stormy clouds and foggy and stuff. Or you can choose a Warcraft sort of splash art featuring a female night elf, or if you want to do a blood elf or something like that. I'm okay. I wouldn't be like super strict about that. But the female elf is what I'm mainly concerned with. And she's hunting in a forest, and it is your wide image. And I am supplying the PSD templates, and so you know exactly the size, and you have places there to plug in all of your reference images and such. So if you have questions on any of this, you can catch us out on swatches.group, which is a Facebook group. If you haven't joined, you can join out there. Any final thoughts you want to wrap up or leave the guys with before we take off on them?
Yeah, for the challenge, because we only have for each group 12 tickets. If you are not able to get a ticket and still want to do the challenge, just go for it. We post also the outlines on the group. You will just not get the template and the upload links for us to review, but you can post your paintings or your sketches, your finals, whatever, into the Facebook group and get comments and help by the group itself. So yeah, so it's up for everyone. Everyone can join, because there was a question which countries can join. Everyone can join who wants to do that. So all people from every country in the world. Just read the description and yeah, go for it. Post it in the group. And if you want Clint to have a look at it, yeah, purchase a ticket on Gumroad. And if you were not able to get a ticket but still want Clint's opinion, consider a one-on-one mentoring on his art-mentor.com. So
yeah, and also remember, guys, there's 2 groups going on with this challenge. So even if you don't get the tickets tomorrow, next week, group 2 of the Tomb of the Sphinx is going through their finals, and they will have another batch of tickets next Saturday as well. So if you can't get it in group 1, look to pick it up in group 2 next week. Something else I was going to add to that. But yeah, this isn't a contest. It's not. There is no prize. There is no winner. This is to give you guys a better idea of what it would be like to take on an actual commission, and get you used to working through a start to finish of a fuller illustrated piece. And I'm serving as both what you would be as an art director and as your art teacher, and I'm trying to educate you along the way, not just give you art director feedback, which is generally, they're not there to teach you. They assume that you know what you're doing. So if you want to check it out there. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody that takes the time to join in, and those who have posted some questions and stuff in the live chat. And you can catch me, remember, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. out on my Twitch channel. I think I'm going to be working on some emotes. I need to make some new emotes for Twitch, and we might even get them set up to be used in the YouTube channel as well. And so we'll probably just be working on some emotes in the morning. And if you want to just hang out with me and chat some art, then it'd be good to have you out there. All right, well, guys, have a good weekend, I should say. And until next time, keep drawing.
bye, guys.